The conference hall on Viridian Prime sparkled with light from a dozen different suns, each one streaming through the massive crystal dome that covered the Galactic Scientific Institute's main building. Dr. Kevin Martinez stood near the back of the crowded room, watching as representatives from 40 different species filled the seats around him. His dark hair had turned gray at the temples over the past year, a reminder that he had been working in galactic science for nearly 2 decades now. The Neural Mapping Initiative will be the most comprehensive study of consciousness ever attempted, announced Dr. Xerix from the central platform. The Calthurian scientist's insectoid body gleamed under the lights, his compound eyes scanning the audience with what Kevin had learned to recognize as satisfaction. We will finally understand the fundamental structures that allow different species to think, to feel, to create. Kevin's colleague, Lisa Chun, leaned toward him and whispered, "Do you think they really want to understand us, or just catalog us like specimens?" "Both, probably," Kevin replied quietly. He had learned that most alien species viewed humanity with a mix of curiosity and mild condescension. Humans were tough. Everyone agreed on that. Surviving Earth's brutal environment proved their physical resilience. But mentally, most aliens assumed humans were simple creatures who got by on stubbornness rather than sophistication. Ambassador Nicole Bryan sat in the front row, her blonde hair pulled back in a professional style that Kevin knew she hated. She caught his eye and gave a small nod. The message was clear. Play nice, be cooperative, and don't give them any reason to exclude Earth from galactic science programs. The presentation continued with Dr. Xerix explaining the methodology. Each species would provide volunteer subjects for neural scanning. The scans would measure everything from basic brain structure to complex cognitive responses. Special attention would be paid to how different species processed information, solved problems, and experienced consciousness. The Mindari have already demonstrated their superior psionic capabilities in preliminary tests, Dr. Xerix said, gesturing to a tall, ethereal being whose translucent skin seemed to shift between colors. The Vexer have shown us how their brains can process multiple timeline scenarios simultaneously. Another gesture, this time toward a crystalline entity that looked more like living geometry than biology. And the Caltharians, my own species, have proven once again that efficiency in neural networking remains unmatched. Kevin noticed that humans weren't mentioned. It wasn't surprising. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 200 years ago. Compared to civilizations that measured their history in millions of years, humans were newcomers. Interesting newcomers, perhaps, but hardly worth special attention in a study of advanced consciousness. After the presentation ended, the scientists gathered in smaller groups to discuss the project details. Kevin and Lisa approached Dr. Xerix, who was surrounded by several other researchers. The Caltharian acknowledged them with a polite tilt of his head. "Ah, our human representatives," he said. His translator turned his clicking speech into smooth English. "I trust you understand the scanning procedures?" "We reviewed all the documentation," Lisa replied. She was better at diplomacy than Kevin. "We're ready to begin whenever you need us." "Excellent." Dr. Xerix's mandibles moved in what the translator identified as approval. "I must admit, I'm curious to see how human brains compare to other mammalian species we've studied. Your evolutionary path on such a harsh world must have created some interesting adaptations." Kevin heard the unspoken assumption. Interesting, but not impressive. He had encountered this attitude countless times. Aliens respected human endurance and physical capabilities. They admired human determination. But when it came to mental sophistication, they saw humans as survivors rather than thinkers. A Vexer scientist named Krell materialized beside them, his crystalline form chiming softly. "The Death World origin is fascinating from an evolutionary perspective," he said. "But we shouldn't expect complex, cognitive structures from species that spent most of their development fighting predators and surviving climate extremes. The brain power goes to survival, not advancement. Lisa's smile remained fixed, but Kevin saw her jaw tighten. He stepped in before she could say something that might cause diplomatic problems. "We're just happy to contribute to the research," he said mildly. "Whatever you find will add to our collective understanding." The Vexer seemed satisfied with this humble response and drifted away. Dr. Xerix assigned them to Research Station 7, where the human volunteers would undergo their initial scans. As they left the conference hall, Lisa finally let her frustration show. "Did you hear him?" she demanded. "Fighting predators and surviving climate extremes? That's exactly what we did. And we got good at it." "I know," Kevin said, "but arguing won't help. Let's just do the work and see what happens." Ambassador Bryant caught up with them in the hallway. "I heard that exchange," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I need you both to understand something. Earth's position in the galactic community is still fragile. We can't afford to be seen as aggressive or oversensitive." "We understand," Kevin assured her. "We'll be professional." "Good." Nicole's expression softened slightly. "And between us, I think they're going to be surprised. Humans didn't conquer Earth by being simple." Over the next 2 weeks, Kevin and Lisa worked with the other researchers to prepare for the actual testing. They met their human volunteers, 15 men and women from various backgrounds who had agreed to participate. Among them was Danny Foster, a cargo hauler with a ready smile; Tracy Kim, a doctor from the outer colonies; and Jason Cole, an engineer who specialized in faster-than-light drive maintenance. The initial scans began on schedule. Kevin watched through the observation glass as Danny lay in the scanning chamber, surrounded by equipment that measured neural activity in ways human science had only dreamed of a few centuries ago. The readouts showed a standard human brain structure: 2 hemispheres, billions of neurons, the usual mammalian setup. Dr. Xerix studied the results with obvious lack of excitement. As expected, he murmured to his assistant, "Unremarkable. Standard adaptation for a persistence hunter species. Nothing that would indicate advanced cognitive capability." Kevin overheard the comment but said nothing. He had spent too many years in alien laboratories to take offense at casual dismissal. Besides, the study had just begun. The real tests would come later, when they measured how different species' brains responded to various challenges. Lisa joined him at the observation window. "They think we're boring," she said. "Let them think that," Kevin replied. "We're not here to impress anyone. We're here to learn." But as he watched the scanning data flow across the screens, Kevin felt a small spark of defiance. Humans had always been underestimated. They were too soft, people said, until humans endured environments that killed other species. They were too slow until human persistence hunted down faster prey. They were too weak until human ingenuity multiplied their strength. Maybe, just maybe, the aliens would learn that underestimating humanity was a mistake. Again, the first phase of research continued for another month. Each species showed exactly what the researchers expected. The results confirmed existing theories and validated the assumption that consciousness evolved along predictable pathways based on environmental pressures. Everything was going according to plan. And then Greg Patterson noticed something strange in the data. Greg Patterson was 26 years old, and this was his first major research assignment. The young technician had been hired straight out of the Galactic Institute's technical program, and he spent most of his time double-checking data that senior scientists had already reviewed. It was boring work, but Greg took it seriously. His father had always told him that details mattered, especially the ones everyone else ignored. That's why he was still in the lab at 3 in the morning, station time, reviewing the deep scan results from the stress response tests. Most researchers just looked at the summary data. Greg preferred to examine the raw readings, watching how individual neurons fired and how neural pathways formed under pressure. The test protocols were straightforward. Each species received a series of increasingly difficult problems to solve while the scanners measured their brain activity. The Mindery showed enhanced psionic wave patterns when stressed. The Vector's crystalline matrices shifted into higher dimensional processing modes. The Caltharians optimized their neural efficiency, shutting down non-essential processes to focus available resources. Then Greg pulled up the human results. He expected to see similar patterns: shutdown of non-essential functions, increased focus on survival processing, maybe some elevated stress hormones. What he saw instead made him sit up straighter in his chair. The human subject, Danny Foster, had been given an impossible logistics problem. The scenario involved routing supply ships through a debris field where every possible path led to collision. Most species recognized the trap immediately, and their brain activity decreased as they accepted the impossibility. Danny's brain had done something completely different. Instead of shutting down or accepting defeat, the neural activity had spiked. But more than that, Greg could see new connections forming in real time. Neurons that hadn't been communicating before suddenly created pathways. Whole regions of Danny's brain that weren't active at the start of the test lit up during the middle of it. Greg ran the recording 3 times, certain he must be misreading the data. But the results were consistent. When faced with an impossible problem, Danny's brain had literally rewired itself on the fly, creating new structures to attack the challenge from angles that hadn't existed before. "That can't be right," Greg muttered. He pulled up the other human test results. Tracy Kim had been given a medical problem with no known solution. Her brain showed the same pattern: explosive growth in neural connectivity when faced with impossibility. Jason Cole's engineering test? Same result. In fact, every single human showed this response. When confronted with problems that had no answer, their brains didn't give up. They changed. Greg's hands shook slightly as he compiled the data. This was bigger than a junior technician should handle alone. He needed to show someone senior. He found Kevin Martinez's contact information and sent an urgent message. Kevin arrived 20 minutes later, his hair disheveled and his shirt buttoned wrong. "This better be important, Greg," he said, but his tone was more curious than angry. "Your message said it was urgent. Look at this." Greg pulled up the comparative brain scans. "Watch what happens when we give an unsolvable problem to a Caltharian." The display showed orderly shutdown of activity. "Now watch a human." Kevin's eyes widened as he saw the explosive neural growth. "Is this a scanning error?" "That's what I thought." Greg switched between different human subjects. "But it happens every time." Every human volunteer shows this same response. Kevin was quiet for a long moment, studying the data. "We need to verify this," he said finally. "Get Lisa. We need to run new tests with fresh subjects and triple-checked equipment." By morning, Lisa had arrived, and they had set up a new testing protocol. They brought in a human volunteer named Angela Wright, a mathematician who hadn't been part of the original scans. They explained that they were running verification tests and needed her to solve some problems. "Some of these might not have solutions," Kevin warned her. "Just do your best." Angela nodded and entered the scanning chamber. They started with simple problems, establishing her baseline neural activity. Then they gave her a mathematical puzzle that the greatest vexor minds had struggled with for 300 years. The puzzle involved calculating probability across multiple simultaneous timelines, something that required the kind of multidimensional thinking that humans simply didn't possess. Or so everyone thought. For 5 minutes, Angela's brain activity remained normal as she examined the problem. Then something shifted. Greg watched in amazement as her neural pathways began reorganizing. New connections formed. Regions of her brain that handled spatial reasoning connected to areas responsible for temporal processing. Parts of her visual cortex that usually processed physical images started working with her mathematical centers. What is she doing? Lisa breathed. On the monitoring screen, they could see Angela's vital signs. Her heart rate had increased. Her breathing was deeper. But she didn't look stressed. She looked focused. Intensely, completely focused. After 20 minutes, Angela opened her eyes. "I think I have something," she said. "It's not a complete solution, but I found a framework that might work. You can't calculate all the timelines simultaneously, because that's thinking about it wrong. You have to treat each timeline as a probability wave, and then..." She launched into an explanation that made Lisa grab a notepad to write it down. Kevin stared at the brain scans. She just created new neural pathways to solve a problem her brain wasn't designed to handle, he said quietly. She rewired herself to think in ways humans aren't supposed to be able to think. And she did it in 20 minutes, Greg added. They ran the test again with different subjects. Ryan Scott, an engineer, received a theoretical physics problem. Within 3 days of working on it, his brain scans showed completely new neural configurations. Karen Lopez, a pilot, tackled a navigation puzzle that required processing sensor data in 11 dimensions. Her brain adapted to handle inputs it had never encountered before. The evidence was undeniable. Human brains possessed an ability that no other species had demonstrated. They could fundamentally restructure themselves in response to challenges. What the aliens called impossible, human brains treated as not solved yet. Kevin called for a meeting with Dr. Xerix. The Caltharian scientist arrived with his usual air of polite condescension, but his attitude changed as Kevin presented the findings. "This must be an equipment malfunction," Dr. Xerix insisted. "Neural pathways don't simply appear out of nowhere." "Then explain this." Lisa showed him comparison scans from the same human subject, taken 3 days apart. The differences were obvious even to a casual observer. Angela Wright's brain literally reorganized itself while working on the vector probability puzzle. Dr. Xerix studied the data in silence. His mandibles clicked in what the translator identified as confusion. "I need to verify this myself," he said finally. "We'll run a new test with equipment I personally calibrate." The verification test used Danny Foster again. Dr. Xerix designed a scenario that combined elements from multiple impossible problems. He wanted to see if the effect was real, or if somehow the humans had found a way to fake the scans. Danny lay in the chamber while Dr. Xerix monitored every aspect of the scanning equipment. Kevin and Lisa watched from the observation room. Greg triple-checked the data feeds. The problem Dr. Xerix presented was genuinely impossible. It required the subject to simultaneously think like a Mindari, process like a Vexer, and optimize like a Caltharian. No single species could do all three. Their brains were structured for their own cognitive style. Danny's baseline scan showed a normal human brain. Then the problem appeared on his screen. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the neural explosion began. Dr. Xerix made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. His entire body went rigid as he watched Danny's brain create new structures in real time. Connections formed between regions that had no business communicating. Whole networks reorganized. It was like watching evolution happen in fast forward. "Impossible," Dr. Xerix whispered. "This is impossible." "And yet," Kevin said softly, "Danny's brain doesn't know that." After an hour, Danny opened his eyes. "I can't solve it completely," he admitted. "But I think I found 3 different approaches that might work if you combine them. It's like the problem wants you to think one way, but you have to think 3 ways at once. He was right. His partial solution showed thinking patterns from all 3 species. His brain had literally tried to become what the problem needed. Dr. Xerix turned to Kevin. "How?" he demanded. "How is this possible?" "I don't know," Kevin admitted. "But I think we need to find out. Because if human brains can do this, we need to understand why. And what it means." The Caltharian scientist nodded slowly. "I'm calling an emergency session with the Research Council," he said. "This changes everything." As news of the discovery spread through the research station, Kevin found himself both excited and worried. Excited because they had found something genuinely new. Worried because he had spent enough time among aliens to know that different often meant dangerous in their minds. Lisa must have had similar thoughts. "Do you think they'll be happy about this?" she asked. "I think," Kevin said carefully, "that we're about to find out if the galaxy is ready to see humans as something more than tough survivors." The Research Council chamber hummed with tension as scientists from across the galaxy gathered to review Kevin's findings. Dr. Xerix had called the emergency session, but even he seemed uncertain about what the discovery meant. The Caltharian stood at the center platform, his compound eyes scanning the assembled researchers. "The data has been verified by 3 independent teams," Dr. Xerix announced. "The results are consistent. Human brains demonstrate an unprecedented ability to create new neural pathways in response to impossible challenges." A Mindari researcher named Xerix floated forward, a translucent form shimmering with what Kevin had learned to recognize as skepticism. "Unprecedented doesn't mean superior," she said. "Many species show neural plasticity. The human response is simply more dramatic." "It's not just dramatic," Lisa argued from her seat. "It's fundamentally different. Other species optimize existing pathways under stress. Humans create entirely new ones." Greg had spent the previous night preparing comparative analyses. Now he displayed them on the chamber's main screen. "Look at these response curves," he said. "When a Caltharian faces an impossible problem, neural efficiency increases by 30% as the brain shuts down non-essential functions. When a Vexer encounters the same problem, dimensional processing expands to explore alternate solutions. But humans?" He switched to the human data. "Neural connectivity increases by 300%. New pathways form that didn't exist before. The brain literally changes its structure." Krell, the Vexer scientist who had dismissed humans earlier, studied the data with his crystalline form chiming softly. "This seems wasteful," he observed. "Why create new structures when optimization would suffice?" "Because optimization assumes the answer exists within your current capabilities," Kevin replied. "Human brains don't make that assumption. They assume that if a solution isn't available, you create the capability to find it." Dr. Xerix's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I propose we investigate the evolutionary basis for this adaptation," he said. "Understanding how this developed may help us understand its function." The council approved the proposal. Over the next week, Kevin and Lisa led a team that dug deep into human evolutionary history. What they found astonished even them. Earth wasn't just a harsh world. Many species evolved on harsh worlds. Caltharians came from a high-gravity planet with toxic atmosphere. The Vexer evolved in radiation-soaked crystal caves. Harsh environments were common. What made Earth unique was its instability. "Look at the climate data from the last 2 million years," Lisa said, presenting their findings to the council. "Earth's climate changed dramatically every few thousand years. Ice ages came and went. Volcanic winters happened without warning. Sea levels rose and fell. Entire ecosystems transformed in spans that were evolutionary eye blinks." Kevin picked up the explanation. "Other death worlds are harsh, but they're predictably harsh. A Caltharian's ancestor knew what challenges it would face: high gravity, toxic air, intense pressure. Their evolution optimized for those specific conditions. But Earth? He shook his head. Humans never knew what was coming next. Forest became tundra, became desert, became grassland. The same region could be frozen wasteland, tropical jungle, and arid plain, all within 1,000 generations. So human brains evolved to handle unpredictability, Dr. Xeric said slowly. More than that, Greg added. He had been researching human cognitive development. They evolved to imagine conditions that didn't exist yet. When climate changed, humans who could mentally model the new environment survived. Those who could only adapt to current conditions died out. The implications rippled through the chamber. A minority researcher stood to speak. Are you suggesting that human imagination is an evolutionary adaptation? Not suggesting, Kevin said. Confirming. Human brains don't just react to problems. They anticipate problems that haven't happened and create solutions for scenarios that don't exist. That's why human children spend so much time in imaginary play. That's why humans tell stories. That's why they ask what if constantly. It's not entertainment. It's survival training. Lisa pulled up brain scans from human children. Look at this. Even at age 5, human children show this neural reorganization when presented with impossible scenarios. A child asked to imagine being an animal will create new processing pathways to think like that animal. Asked to imagine flying, their brains rewire to process three-dimensional movement they've never experienced. It's instinctive. But surely this ability has limits, Xeric said. Humans can't actually think like Mindari or process like Vexer. Can't they? Kevin challenged. He brought up Angela Wright's brain scans from the timeline probability test. Angela's brain created structures similar to Vexer dimensional processing. Not identical, but functionally similar. Her brain looked at what was needed and built an approximation. Dr. Xeric was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made everyone listen. I believe we need to test the practical applications of this ability, he said. Theory is fascinating, but what can humans actually do with this adaptation? The council agreed. Over the next month, they designed tests that pushed human cognitive abilities to their limits. They gave humans problems that had stumped galactic civilization for centuries. Ryan Scott, the engineer, received schematics for a failed faster-than-light drive design that the Vexer had abandoned 300 years ago. The design was mathematically sound, but practically impossible. Something about the quantum fluctuations always caused catastrophic failure. Vexer scientists had tried everything. Ryan studied the problem for 5 days. His brain scans showed constant reorganization. On the 6th day, he called Kevin into his workspace. I think I see the issue, Ryan said. His eyes were bright with excitement. The Vexer approached this as a quantum problem. They tried to control the fluctuations. But what if you don't control them? What if you use them? Kevin stared at the calculations Ryan had produced. The engineer had completely reframed the problem. Instead of fighting the quantum effects, his design incorporated them as part of the drive mechanism. It was insane. It violated every assumption about how FDL drives worked. It was also brilliant. Dr. Xeric brought the design to Vexer engineers. They spent a week analyzing it. When they returned, Krell's crystalline form was chiming in what the translator identified as amazement. It shouldn't work, Krell said. Every principle of quantum drive theory says this is wrong. But the mathematics are sound. We're building a test model. Similar breakthroughs came from other human volunteers. Tracy Kim, the doctor, found a new approach to treating the Blight Plague that had killed millions of Caltharians. Her solution involved using the plague's own reproduction mechanism against it. No one had thought of it because it required thinking of disease as a resource rather than an enemy. Danny Foster solved a logistics problem that had limited the Mindari colony expansion for decades. His solution required treating supply chains as living organisms that could adapt and reroute themselves. It was a completely non-linear approach that Mindari logic had never considered. Each success brought the same reaction from alien scientists. It shouldn't work, but it does. Kevin began to understand what made human cognition unique. Other species were smarter in specific ways. Mindari had better telepathy. Vexor could process more complex mathematics. Caltharians were more efficient. But humans had something none of them possessed: the ability to look at reality and imagine it being completely different. We conceptualize the non-existent, Kevin explained in his report to the Council. Other species work within the boundaries of what is. Humans work within the boundaries of what could be. We don't just solve problems. We imagine problems into different shapes until they become solvable. Dr. Xerix read the report with what Kevin had learned to recognize as troubled contemplation. After the public session ended, the Caltharian asked Kevin to join him privately. "Your findings are remarkable," Dr. Xerix said. "But I must share a concern. Not all members of the Council are pleased with these discoveries." "Why not?" Kevin asked. "Understanding different cognitive styles helps everyone." "Because different is threatening," Dr. Xerix replied. "The galaxy has operated on certain assumptions for millions of years. Species have known roles based on their capabilities. Mindari handled diplomacy and psionic communications. Vexor managed complex calculations and theoretical physics. Caltharians optimize systems and processes. Everyone knows where they fit. And humans don't fit," Kevin said slowly. "Worse than that," Dr. Xerix said. "Humans make others question if their own limitations are real. If a human can approximate vector processing by simply imagining how to do it, what does that say about vector superiority? If a human can solve a Caltharian efficiency problem by ignoring efficiency principles, what does that say about Caltharian methods?" Kevin felt a chill. "You're saying they feel threatened." "Some do," Dr. Xerix admitted. "And threatened species do unpredictable things. I wanted to warn you because I fear this research may face opposition. Powerful opposition." That night, Kevin met with Lisa and Greg. He shared Dr. Xerix's concerns. Lisa's expression darkened. "They're afraid we'll make them obsolete," she said. "Or that we'll become dangerous," Greg added. "If humans can adapt to any challenge, what's to stop them from adapting to dominate the..." The news spread through the galactic networks faster than Kevin had anticipated. Within 3 days of the Research Council's preliminary report, every major civilization had access to the findings. Human neural adaptability became the most discussed scientific discovery in recent history. But the discussion wasn't all positive. Ambassador Nicole Bryant summoned Kevin and Lisa to an emergency meeting. Her office on Viridian Prime overlooked the research complex. But today, the beautiful view went unnoticed. Nicole's usually calm demeanor showed cracks of stress. "The Caltharian Council contacted me this morning," she said without preamble. "They want the research classified." Classified? Kevin couldn't believe what he was hearing. This is pure science. These are findings about how brains work. "They don't see it that way," Nicole replied. She activated a holographic display showing diplomatic communications. "Look at these." The Caltharian Council claims that revealing human cognitive capabilities could destabilize galactic peace. The Vexor Assembly is demanding we halt all further testing. Even some Mindari factions are calling for restrictions on human population growth. Lisa's face went pale. "Population restrictions? They can't be serious." "They're very serious," Nicole said grimly. "I've been in diplomatic service for 20 years. I've never seen this level of coordinated concern. Multiple civilizations are discussing humanity's future, and we're not being invited to the conversations. Kevin felt anger rising in his chest. So we discover something amazing about human cognition, and the response is to try to suppress it. Fear drives strange decisions, Nicole said. And right now, a lot of powerful people are afraid. Afraid of what humans might do if they fully understand their own potential. Greg had been monitoring scientific networks. He burst into the office with his tablet showing priority alerts. "It's getting worse," he said. A Vexer political faction just published a manifesto calling humans reality deviants. They're arguing that human ability to reconceptualize problems threatens universal order. "That's insane," Lisa protested. "Is it?" Nicole asked quietly. "Think about it from their perspective. For millions of years, the galaxy has operated on the assumption that reality has fixed rules. Mathematics works a certain way. Physics behaves predictably. Problems have solutions or they don't. Then humans come along and demonstrate that they can imagine their way around impossibilities. That's terrifying to species who built their entire civilizations on certainty." Kevin paced the office. "But we're not changing reality. We're just finding new ways to think about it." "To them, that's the same thing," Nicole said. "Dr. Zurich sent me a private message. He says there's a movement in the research community to bury your findings. Publish them as interesting but not significant. Downplay the implications." "That's intellectual dishonesty," Kevin said. "That's politics," Nicole corrected. "And right now, politics may determine whether humanity remains a full member of galactic society or gets quietly marginalized." A message alert interrupted them. Dr. Zurich was requesting an urgent video conference. Nicole accepted. The Calthurian's image appeared, and even through the translation barrier, his distress was obvious. "I've been ordered to halt all human brain research," Dr. Zurich said. "The Calthurian Science Ministry has classified the existing data and forbidden publication." "On what grounds?" Kevin demanded. "Security concerns," Dr. Zurich replied. "They argue that detailed information about human cognitive abilities could be weaponized, could be used to manipulate or control humans, could create instability if it falls into wrong hands." "Those are excuses," Lisa said. "They're afraid." "Yes," Dr. Zurich agreed. "They are. And I must confess, I understand their fear. Your species has abilities that challenge fundamental assumptions. That's always dangerous." Kevin felt betrayed. "You supported this research. You verified our findings. And I stand by those findings scientifically," Dr. Zurich said. "But science exists within political reality. I cannot fight my entire government." After the call ended, Nicole looked at the three researchers. "We have a decision to make," she said. "We can comply with the classification order, or we can release the findings ourselves." "Release them how?" Greg asked. "The galactic scientific networks are monitored, but there are independent channels," Nicole explained. "Researchers who value truth over politics. If we leak the data, it gets into the public domain. Can't be buried. That would be professional suicide," Lisa said. "We'd be blacklisted from galactic science." "Probably," Nicole agreed. "But the information would be out there. Other researchers could build on it. The truth wouldn't stay hidden." Kevin thought about all the work they had done, the discoveries they had made, the potential for humans to finally be understood as something more than tough survivors. Then he thought about what suppression would mean. Humans relegated to secondary status because the galaxy found their abilities too frightening. "I vote we release it," he said. "But I need to know something first. Why are you willing to risk your career for this, Ambassador?" Nicole smiled sadly. "Because I've spent 20 years watching humans prove themselves over and over. We're tough, yes. We're stubborn, absolutely. But we're also creative, compassionate, and capable of incredible things. If we let fear bury this research, we're telling the galaxy that they're right to limit us. I won't do that. Lisa nodded. I'm in. Greg? The young technician looked terrified but determined. My dad always said that truth matters, he said. I'm in. Before they could act, another alert interrupted them. This one was a general broadcast. The Galactic Council was calling an emergency session. All member species were required to send representatives. The topic: humanity's status in galactic civilization. That was fast, Nicole said. Too fast. Someone's been planning this. The session was scheduled for 2 days later. Nicole spent those days in frantic diplomatic communications, trying to understand what was coming. Kevin, Lisa, and Greg prepared their data, ready to defend their research if given the chance. When the council session began, the Grand Chamber on Viridian Prime held representatives from every major civilization. Nicole sat in Earth's designated seat. Kevin and his team watched from the observation gallery. The Caltharian Council leader spoke first. We gather to address a matter of galactic importance, she said. Recent research has revealed that humans possess cognitive abilities that differ significantly from established norms. This raises questions about humanity's integration into our society. A Vexor delegate stood. The Vexor Assembly proposes restricted membership for humanity. Humans would retain basic rights but would be limited in their settlement expansion and required to register any research into cognitive enhancement. Kevin felt sick. They were treating humans like a threat. A Mindari representative floated forward. The Mindari Collective suggests a compromise. Publish the findings but classify the methodologies. Allow general knowledge but prevent humans from systematically developing these abilities. That's still suppression, Nicole said. Her voice carried through the chamber. You're asking us to remain ignorant of our own capabilities. We're asking you to remain safe, the Mindari replied. And to keep the galaxy safe. Power without wisdom is dangerous. And who decides when we have enough wisdom? Nicole challenged. You? The species who fear what we might become. The debate continued for hours. Proposal after proposal sought to limit, restrict, or control humanity. Kevin watched in growing despair. Everything they had discovered, all the potential they had revealed, was being twisted into justification for discrimination. Then something unexpected happened. An alert sounded throughout the council chamber. A priority emergency broadcast. The moderator looked confused but allowed the transmission. Dr. Xerix appeared on the main screen. Honored council members, he said. I apologize for the interruption, but a situation has developed that requires immediate attention. A solar flare of unprecedented magnitude is heading toward the Vexor colony world of Nexa Prime. Standard evacuation protocols cannot move 20 million colonists in time. The colony will be destroyed in 8 hours. The chamber erupted in chaos. Vexor delegates were shouting. Mindari were trying to organize rescue efforts. Caltharians were calculating evacuation possibilities. Everyone agreed. There was no solution. The colony was too large, the time too short, the flare too powerful. Everyone except one person. Angela Wright stood up in the observation gallery. I have an idea, she called out. The chamber fell silent. Angela, the mathematician who had solved the Vexor probability puzzle, walked down to the main floor. Nicole yielded her position. The colony's defense grid, Angela said. It's designed to deflect small-scale threats, right? Asteroids, debris, minor radiation. Yes, a Vexor delegate confirmed. But a solar flare of this magnitude would overwhelm it in seconds. Not if you reconfigure it, Angela said. Her eyes had that focused look Kevin recognized. Her brain was already adapting, already creating new pathways to solve this impossible problem. The grid generators aren't strong enough individually. But what if you linked them? Not in series, that wouldn't work. But what if you created a resonance cascade? Each generator amplifying the next? That's theoretically impossible, the Vexor delegate said. The power requirements would exceed. Not if you pulse it, Angela interrupted. Don't try to maintain. The council chamber transformed into a command center. Angela was given direct access to Nexer Prime's defense systems. Vexor engineers set up computational arrays that could process the massive calculations she needed. Kevin watched as she worked, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. Her brain activity is off the charts, Greg whispered. He had pulled up Angela's neural monitoring data on his tablet. Look at this! She's creating connections between her visual cortex, mathematical processing centers, and temporal reasoning. She's literally building a new way to think about time and energy. Lisa stood beside Kevin, watching Angela work with a mixture of awe and anxiety. 6 hours to do what Vexor science couldn't do in centuries, she murmured. No pressure. The clock counted down. 5 hours remaining. 4. Angela worked without stopping, her calculations filling screen after screen. Vexor engineers tried to follow her work, but she was thinking in ways they couldn't track. She wasn't just doing mathematics. She was reimagining what mathematics could be. This doesn't make sense, a Vexor scientist complained. She's treating energy waves like they have consciousness, like they can be negotiated with. Maybe that's exactly what we need, Dr. Zurich said quietly. The Caltharian had joined the effort, setting aside political concerns in the face of imminent disaster. Human cognition doesn't follow our rules. Perhaps that's the point. 3 hours. Angela's eyes were bloodshot from staring at screens. Nicole brought her water and food, which she consumed without looking away from her work. 2 hours. I've got the framework, Angela announced. The pulse sequence will work, but the timing has to be exact. We're talking nanosecond precision. Any drift and the resonance cascade collapses. Our automated systems can't maintain that level of precision, a Vexor engineer admitted. The quantum fluctuations introduce too much variance. Then we do it manually, Angela said. I'll control the pulse timing. I can adjust in real time based on what the flare is doing. That's impossible, the engineer protested. No organic mind can process data at that speed. Angela smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. Watch me. 1 hour remaining. The defense grid was reconfigured according to Angela's specifications. Every generator on Nexer Prime was linked into her resonance cascade network. 20 million Vexor colonists huddled in reinforced shelters, their only hope resting on a human mathematician and an impossible idea. Kevin found himself praying, something he hadn't done since childhood. Lisa held his hand. Greg couldn't look away from the screens. The solar flare hit. Massive waves of radiation and charged particles slammed into Nexer Prime's atmosphere. The planet's natural magnetic field deflected some of it, but the flare was too powerful. Destruction seemed inevitable. Then the defense grid activated. Angela's fingers danced across the control interface. The first generator pulsed. Energy cascaded through the network exactly as she had predicted. The second generator fired. Then the third. The timing was impossibly precise, each pulse synchronized to the flare's own fluctuations. But Kevin could see the problem. The flare wasn't following a perfect pattern. Random surges and dips threw off the rhythm. The automated system would have failed within seconds. Angela adapted. Her brain was processing the incoming data faster than should be possible. Kevin watched her neural scan on Greg's tablet. Her mind was creating new pathways in real time, building connections that could predict the flare's chaos. She wasn't just reacting. She was anticipating. She's thinking 3 seconds ahead, Greg breathed. Her brain is modeling the flare's behavior and adjusting the pulse sequence before the variations even happen. For 47 minutes, Angela fought the solar flare. Her hands never stopped moving. Her eyes tracked data streams that would overwhelm most beings. Her brain rewired itself continuously, adapting to each new challenge the flare presented. When the flare finally passed, the defense grid had held. 20 million lives saved. Nexar Prime's surface showed scorch marks, but the colony was intact. The impossible had become reality because one human woman refused to accept impossibility. Angela collapsed. Medical teams rushed to her. She was unconscious but alive, her brain exhausted from the unprecedented effort. As they carried her to the medical center, the council chamber remained silent. Finally, the Vexor Assembly leader stood. His crystalline form chimed with what the translator identified as profound emotion. "I owe this human an apology," he said. "I owe all humans an apology. We were prepared to restrict your species out of fear. Fear of abilities we didn't understand. But this woman just saved 20 million Vexor lives using those exact abilities. She solved a problem we couldn't solve. She did the impossible." Dr. Zurich stepped forward. "The research shows that human cognitive abilities are unique," he said. "But unique doesn't mean dangerous. It means valuable." Angela Wright demonstrated what humans have been trying to tell us. They use their abilities to help, not to dominate. Nicole stood. "Earth doesn't want special treatment," she said. "We just want to be understood. Yes, human brains work differently. Yes, we can adapt in ways other species can't. But we use those abilities to solve problems, to help others, to make the galaxy better." A Mindari delegate floated forward. "I move that we not only reject all proposals to restrict humanity, but that we actively encourage humans to develop their cognitive abilities. The galaxy needs problem solvers. We need beings who can look at impossibility and find solutions." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would have full membership with no restrictions. The research would be published in its entirety. Human cognitive abilities would be celebrated, not feared. But the council went further. They established the Human Cognitive Institute, a research center dedicated to understanding and developing human mental capabilities. They invited humans to join previously restricted scientific programs. They asked Earth to send teachers who could help other species learn human-style creative thinking. Kevin watched it all with tears in his eyes. They had started this journey with aliens who saw humans as unremarkable. They were ending it with a galaxy that finally understood what made humanity special. 3 days later, Angela woke up. Kevin, Lisa, and Greg were there when she opened her eyes. "Did it work?" she asked grudgingly. 20 million Vexor are alive because of you," Kevin told her. "And the entire galaxy just changed how they think about humanity." Angela smiled. "Good. I was worried my math was off." They all laughed. Leave it to a human to save millions and worry about mathematical accuracy. Dr. Zurich visited Earth 6 months later. He met with Kevin at the newly established Human Cognitive Institute on Earth. The facility was already training both humans and aliens in cross-species cognitive techniques. "I must confess something," Dr. Zurich said as they walked through the research labs. "When I first met you, I thought humans were the least interesting species in our study. I was wrong. You're the most interesting. Not because your brains are better than ours, but because they're different in ways that matter." "Different how?" Kevin asked. "Every species contributes to galactic civilization," Dr. Zurich explained. "Mindari give us telepathy. Vexor give us advanced mathematics. Caltharians give us efficiency. But humans?" He paused. "Humans give us hope. Hope that impossible problems can be solved. Hope that new solutions exist. Hope that the future doesn't have to look like the past. Kevin found Lisa teaching a class of mixed species students. She was showing them how to approach problems by first imagining different frameworks. The key isn't to think harder, she was saying. It's to think differently. When you hit a wall, don't push harder against it. Imagine the wall isn't there. Imagine you're on the other side. Imagine the wall is a door. Your brain will start finding ways to make the imagination real. A young Caltharian student raised a claw. But what if the problem is truly impossible? Lisa smiled. Humans don't believe in truly impossible. We believe in not solved yet. There's a difference. Impossible means stop trying. Not solved yet means keep imagining. That evening, Kevin stood on the Institute's observation deck, looking up at the stars. The galaxy that had once seemed so vast and unknowable now felt like home. Humans had found their place. Not as warriors, not as conquerors, but as dreamers. As imaginers. As the species who looked at reality and asked, what if? Greg joined him. Dr. Xerix told me something interesting, the young researcher said. He said that in all his years studying consciousness, he never understood what imagination was for. Other species have it, but they use it for entertainment. For art. Humans use it for survival. For problem solving. For making the impossible possible. That's because we evolved in chaos, Kevin replied. When reality keeps changing, imagination becomes the ultimate survival tool. The ability to mentally model what doesn't exist yet. That's how you prepare for a future you can't predict. So what's next for us? Greg asked. Kevin thought about all the unsolved problems in the galaxy. All the challenges that had stumped civilizations for millennia. All the impossible questions waiting for someone to imagine new answers. We keep doing what humans do best, he said. We look at the impossible and ask, why not? We take problems that have no solution and imagine solutions into existence. We show the galaxy that reality is more flexible than they think. And if that scares them? Greg asked.